One second, you feel safe. And then,
The police are on their way.
well, you still do.
The coffee was cold again. That's how I knew Julia was cheating on me. Not because of the late nights at the office or the mysterious phone calls she took in the bathroom, but because she'd stopped making fresh coffee in the morning. For 15 years, my wife had been religious about that damn coffee maker. Now, it sat there like a monument to our dying marriage, brewing yesterday's disappointment. My name is Mark Dyson, and I'm 43 years old. I work in IT security, which means I spend my days protecting other people's secrets while being completely oblivious to the ones rotting away in my own house. The irony wasn't lost on me, especially not at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning when I was staring at lipstick on Julia's collar that definitely wasn't her shade. "You're up early," she said, breezing into the kitchen like she owned the world. Julia had always been magnetic, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone else feel like supporting characters in her personal drama. At 40, she still turned heads, still commanded attention, still made me feel like the luckiest bastard alive. Or at least, she used to. "Couldn't sleep," I muttered, dumping the cold coffee down the sink. "Big presentation today." She wasn't listening. She was already scrolling through her phone, her manicured fingers dancing across the screen with the urgency of someone conducting a secret orchestra. Her job in public relations had always demanded constant communication, but lately, those communications seemed to require a lot more giggling and secretive smiles than usual. "I'll be late tonight," she said without looking up. "Client dinner." "Which client?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Julia's fingers stopped moving for just a fraction of a second. Long enough for someone in my line of work to notice, not long enough for a normal husband to catch. "Vincent Strom," she said finally. "The hedge fund guy. Big account." Vincent Strom. I'd heard that name floating around our house for the past 3 months, always accompanied by Julia's breathless descriptions of his wealth, his influence, his vision for the future. The way she said his name made it sound like she was talking about a religious experience rather than a business relationship. "Right," I said. "The visionary." She looked up then, her green eyes flashing with something that might have been guilt or might have been annoyance. With Julia, it was always hard to tell. "Don't be sarcastic, Mark. It doesn't suit you." That was Julia's favorite weapon, making me feel small with surgical precision. She'd perfected the art over the years, death by 1,000 tiny cuts. The sad part was, it still worked. After she left, I sat in our pristine kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of our perfect life. The granite countertops we'd fought about for 3 weeks, the stainless steel appliances that cost more than my first car, the family photos strategically placed to create the illusion of happiness for anyone who might be watching. But I was watching now, really watching, and the illusion was starting to crack. My phone buzzed. A text from my buddy Deshaun. "Drinks tonight? You look like you need it." Deshaun Martinez was an ex-cop who'd left the force after 20 years and too many disappointments. He ran a small private investigation business now, mostly insurance fraud and cheating spouses. The irony of that friendship was about to become crystal clear. I was about to text him back when I noticed Julia's iPad sitting on the counter. She'd left in such a hurry that she'd forgotten it, or maybe she'd just gotten careless. In my business, carelessness was usually the first sign that someone was about to get caught. The screen was still unlocked. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed of it either. When your marriage is circling the drain, you grab whatever life preserver you can find, even if it's made of other people's secrets. The messages were right there, bold as brass and twice as shameless. A thread between Julia and someone listed as V that read like a bad romance novel written by someone with unlimited funds and limited imagination. "Can't wait to see you tonight, the usual place?" Always. Mark is so clueless. Sometimes I think he'd miss a tornado if it was happening in his own backyard. Poor bastard. Still, Better for us. Room 412? Perfect. I'll bring the champagne you like. I stared at the screen until the words started to blur. 15 years of marriage, and this was how it ended, with me finding out I was poor bastard in my own wife's love story. The usual place. Room 412. I knew exactly where that was. The Grandview Hotel downtown. The kind of place that charged $500 a night for the privilege of pretending your affair was sophisticated rather than sordid. My hands were shaking as I screenshot the messages. In my line of work, you always document everything. Evidence first, emotions later. It was a lesson that was about to serve me better than I could have possibly imagined. The front door slammed, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Emma, our 17-year-old daughter, stomped into the kitchen with the kind of righteous fury that only teenagers could muster before 8 a.m. "Where's Mom?" she demanded. "Work," I said, closing the iPad. "Early meeting." Emma gave me a look that suggested she wasn't buying it. My daughter had inherited Julia's intelligence and my stubborn streak, a combination that made her nearly impossible to fool. "She's been having a lot of early meetings lately," she said. "Business is good." "Right." Emma grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and headed for the door. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "You know you can talk to me, right? About stuff?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. How long had Emma known? How long had everyone known except me? "I know, kiddo. Thanks." After she left, I sat alone in my perfect kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my perfect life, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mark Dyson?" The voice was female, crisp, with the kind of authority that suggested she was used to being obeyed. "Yes." "We need to talk. Corner of 8th and Cedar, 1 hour. Come alone and bring a notepad. You're going to want to write this down." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my mind racing. In the space of 30 minutes, my entire world had shifted off its axis. My wife was cheating, my daughter knew more than she was letting on, and now some stranger was summoning me to clandestine meetings like I was living in a spy novel. The smart thing would have been to ignore the call, to confront Julia directly, to handle this like a normal person going through a normal divorce. But as I was about to learn, there was nothing normal about what was coming next. The corner of 8th and Cedar wasn't much to look at, a parking garage that served the business district, the kind of place where important people met when they didn't want to be seen being important. I sat in my Honda Civic, feeling ridiculous and paranoid in equal measure, when a black Mercedes pulled up beside me. The woman who got out looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a business magazine. Mid-40s, silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. She moved with the kind of confidence that comes from having more money than God and fewer scruples than the devil. She slid into my passenger seat without invitation, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and barely contained fury. "Evelyn Strom," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Vincent's wife." The world tilted sideways. Vincent's wife, the woman whose husband was currently planning to meet my wife in room 412 of the Grandview Hotel. "I know what you're thinking," she continued, settling back in the seat like she owned it. "What are the odds? But this isn't coincidence, Mark. This is business." "Business?" "Your wife is sleeping with my husband. Has been for 3 months. I assume you figured that out by now, or you wouldn't be here." Her directness was like a slap. No preamble, no gentle lead-in, just the truth delivered with surgical precision. "How did you know about you? Please. I've known about Vincent's little hobby for years. He thinks he's discreet, but he's actually just predictable. Rich men always are." She opened her purse and pulled out a tablet. "Julia isn't his first, and she won't be his last. But she might be his most expensive mistake." She swiped through photos on the screen. Julia and Vincent at restaurants I couldn't afford. Julia and Vincent at charity galas I'd never been invited to. Julia and Vincent looking at each other the way she used to look at me, back when I was still worth looking at. The question, Evelyn continued, is what you're planning to do about it. Divorce her, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language. No. Her response was immediate and non-negotiable. That's exactly what you're not going to do. At least not yet. I stared at her. Excuse me? Evelyn reached into her purse again and pulled out a checkbook. Not a regular checkbook, one of those leather-bound affairs that banks give to people who have more money than sense. I'm going to write you a check, she said, clicking her pen. A very large check. In exchange, you're going to stay married to Julia for exactly 2 more months. You're going to pretend everything is normal. You're going to smile and play the devoted husband while I finish what I started. What you started? Destroying my husband. She said it like she was discussing the weather. Vincent thinks he's untouchable. Old money, new money, doesn't matter. He believes his wealth makes him invincible. I'm about to teach him otherwise. She wrote something on the check, tore it off, and handed it to me. I looked down at the number and nearly choked. $10 million. This is insane, I managed. This is a down payment. Play along for 2 months, help me gather the evidence I need, and there will be 90 million more where that came from. $100 million. The number was so large, it didn't seem real. I made decent money in IT security, but this was generational wealth. This was never work again money. Why? I asked. Because Vincent is about to lose everything, and when he does, he's going to panic. Panicked men make stupid decisions. If you divorce Julia now, he might decide it's time to cut his losses and run. I need him to feel safe, secure, like his little affair is still a secret. I need him to stay exactly where he is while I pull the rug out from under him. She leaned closer, and I could smell her perfume mixed with something else, the metallic scent of barely controlled rage. My husband has spent 20 years thinking he's smarter than everyone else. He's stolen from pension funds, manipulated stock prices, destroyed lives for profit. The SEC has been investigating him for 2 years, but they can't make anything stick because Vincent is very good at covering his tracks. And you're going to help them? I'm going to bury him. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. But I need time, and I need him to feel safe. That's where you come in. I looked at the check again. $10 million, more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. What's the catch? No catch, just a simple business transaction. You keep your mouth shut, you play the loving husband, and you help me document every sordid detail of their affair. In 2 months, you'll be rich, Vincent will be in federal prison, and Julia will be exactly what she deserves to be, alone and broke. And if I say no? Evelyn's smile disappeared. Then you divorce Julia, Vincent panics and flees the country with whatever assets he can liquidate, and you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been. Oh, and Vincent will probably take Julia with him. Rich men in exile need companions, and your wife has proven she's very accommodating. The thought of Julia disappearing into some international playboy lifestyle while I stayed behind to explain to Emma why Mommy wasn't coming home was almost as nauseating as the affair itself. 2 months, I said. 2 months. And then? Then you take your $100 million and disappear, or stay and watch the fireworks. Your choice. She reached into her purse one more time and pulled out a business card. It was blank except for a phone number. Memorize it, then destroy the card. When you're ready to begin, call that number. Someone will give you instructions. She got out of my car as smoothly as she'd gotten in, pausing only to lean down to the window. Oh, and Mark, don't deposit that check until tomorrow. I need to make sure the funds are properly arranged. She walked back to her Mercedes, leaving me alone with a $10 million piece of paper and the growing realization that I just agreed to something that would either make me rich beyond my wildest dreams or destroy what was left of my life. I sat in that parking garage for another 20 minutes, staring at the check and trying to process what had just happened. My wife was cheating on me with a man whose wife had just offered me a fortune to help destroy him. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably illegal in ways I couldn't even imagine. It was also the best offer I was ever going to get. I drove home in a daze, the check burning a hole in my wallet like radioactive material. Julia was still at work, or at least, that's where she was supposed to be. For all I knew, she was already at the Grandview Hotel, preparing for her romantic evening with Vincent. The house felt different when I walked in. The same furniture, the same pictures on the walls, the same carefully curated life we'd built together, but now it all felt like a stage set for a play I'd never auditioned for. My phone buzzed, a text from Julia. "Going to be very late tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Have fun." She responded immediately, "Thanks, honey. Love you. Love you." 2 words that used to mean everything and now meant less than nothing. But for the next 2 months, I was going to have to pretend they still mattered. I walked into my study and sat down at my computer. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I opened a new document and started typing. Day 1. Operation Payback. It felt good to have a plan, even if that plan involved pretending my marriage wasn't already dead and buried. I was about to become very rich, and my wife was about to learn that some secrets cost more than others. The game had begun. The next morning, I deposited the check, $10 million, just like that. The bank manager, a nervous man named Peterson, who'd handled my account for 5 years, nearly fainted when he saw the amount. "Mr. Dyson, this is quite unusual. Perhaps we should discuss some investment options." "Just deposit it," I said, "and keep it quiet." By noon, the money was in my account. $10 million, sitting there like a nuclear weapon disguised as a balance statement. I'd never felt so rich or so dirty in my entire life. Julia came home that evening glowing with the kind of satisfaction that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with Vincent Strom's hotel suite. She hummed while she made dinner, kissed my cheek when she thought I wasn't paying attention, and generally acted like a woman who'd just had the best afternoon of her life. "How was your client dinner?" I asked over takeout Chinese food. "Productive," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Vincent is very hands-on with his business relationships." I nearly choked on my lo mein. "Sounds like a dedicated businessman." "Oh, he is. Very dedicated. Very thorough." She smiled at some private memory. "He's taking me to the Hendricks Foundation Gala next week. For work, of course." Of course. Because nothing said professional relationship like a $5,000 a plate charity event. "That's great, honey. I'm proud of you." The words tasted like poison, but I forced them out with a smile. Julia beamed at me like I'd just given her permission to rob a bank. My phone buzzed. A text from the number Evelyn had given me. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Starbucks on 5th Street. Come alone." The next afternoon, I found myself sitting across from a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a spy novel. Mid-30s, dark hair, expensive suit, the kind of face that you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. Perfect for someone in his line of work. "Call me David," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I work for Mrs. Strom." "Doing what?" "Information gathering, documentation, the kind of work that requires discretion and attention to detail." He pulled out a manila envelope. "Your first assignment." Inside the envelope were photographs, documents, and a small device that looked like a cross between a pen and a USB drive. "Vincent and your wife meet twice a week," David explained. "Tuesdays and Fridays, usually at the Grandview Hotel, sometimes at his penthouse downtown. We need you to document their schedule, their conversations, anything that might be useful later. You want me to spy on my own wife. We want you to gather evidence of an ongoing affair that's already destroying your marriage. There's a difference." He pointed to the small device. "This is a recording pen, legal to use in your own home, and since you're married to Julia, your home includes anywhere she takes you. Dinner conversations, phone calls she makes in your presence, anything she says that might be relevant. Relevant to what? Vincent isn't just cheating on his wife, Mr. Dyson. He's been using his affair with Julia to launder money through her PR firm. Every business dinner they have, every client meeting, it's all part of an elaborate shell game designed to hide assets from federal investigators. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Julia's involved in money laundering? Probably not knowingly. Vincent's too smart to trust a civilian with that kind of information. But her firm has been receiving payments for services never rendered, and those payments are being used to purchase assets that Vincent can access later. When the feds finally move on him, he'll claim the money belongs to Julia's company, not him. So she's being used. She's being used, and when this all comes out, she'll be the one holding the bag while Vincent disappears to a non-extradition country with a new identity and a Swiss bank account. I stared at the photographs. Julia and Vincent at expensive restaurants. Julia and Vincent getting into his Porsche. Julia and Vincent looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. What do you need me to do? Be yourself. Be the devoted husband. Go to social events with her, meet Vincent. Play the role of the clueless spouse who's just happy his wife is successful. And document everything. He slid a business card across the table. That's a secure email address. Send us everything. Photos, recordings, schedules, anything that seems relevant. We'll take care of the rest. And in 2 months? In 2 months, Vincent Strome will be arrested, his assets will be seized, and your wife will be free to start over with whatever's left of her dignity. Which, based on these photos, isn't much. That evening, I sat in my study, looking at the evidence of my wife's betrayal spread out across my desk. 15 years of marriage, and it had come to this, me planning to destroy the man she loved while pretending to support her career. Julia knocked on the door. "Mark, can I come in?" I quickly shoved the photos into a drawer. "Sure." She entered wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one she used to wear when she wanted to seduce me. Now she was probably wearing it because Vincent had told her how good she looked in it. "I wanted to thank you," she said, perching on the arm of my chair. "For what?" "For being so supportive of my work. I know it's been hard with all the late nights and the travel, but this account with Vincent could really change things for us." Change things. She had no idea how right she was. "I just want you to be happy," I said. She kissed the top of my head, and for a moment, I almost forgot that she was betraying me with every breath she took. "I love you, Mark. I know I don't say it enough, but I do." After she left, I sat alone in the dark, thinking about love and lies and the strange mathematics of revenge. In 2 months, I would be $100 million richer, and Julia would discover that some affairs cost more than others. But first, I had a role to play. The devoted husband, the supportive partner, the man who was too stupid to see what was happening right in front of his face. It was going to be the performance of my lifetime. 3 weeks into my new career as a professional cuckold, I'd become an expert at living a double life. During the day, I played the devoted husband, supporting Julia's career advancement and pretending not to notice when she came home smelling like another man's cologne. At night, I documented everything, every lie, every secret meeting, every breathless phone conversation she thought I couldn't hear. The recording pen had become my constant companion. I carried it everywhere, capturing Julia's half of phone conversations, her meetings with Vincent's associates, her increasingly elaborate explanations for why she needed to work late again. "Vincent wants me to handle the Morrison account personally," she said over breakfast on a Thursday morning. "It might mean a few overnight trips to Chicago." "That's great, honey. You deserve the recognition." What she didn't know was that there was no Morrison account. David had confirmed it. Vincent was setting up another shell company, and Julia was going to be the unwitting front woman for a money laundering operation that would make her a federal target when everything came crashing down. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Hendricks Gala tonight. You're going." The Hendricks Foundation Gala was the kind of event where the city's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their charity while writing off expensive dinners as tax deductions. Julia had been planning her outfit for weeks, treating it like her debut into Vincent's world of wealth and privilege. "I wish you were coming with me," she said, adjusting her earrings in the bedroom mirror. She was wearing a black dress that cost more than my car payment, her hair styled in an elaborate updo that had required 3 hours at the salon. "Work emergency," I lied. "But you'll have fun. Take pictures." She kissed my cheek, leaving behind the scent of perfume and guilt. "Don't wait up." 30 minutes after she left, I was in my own car, following her to the Grandview Hotel where Vincent was picking her up. I watched from across the street as she got into his Porsche, watched him kiss her hand like they were starring in some romantic movie instead of committing adultery in plain sight. The gala was held at the Riverside Country Club, a sprawling monument to old money and older prejudices. I arrived an hour after Julia, wearing my best suit and carrying a press pass that David had somehow acquired for me. According to my credentials, I was a freelance photographer covering the event for a local lifestyle magazine. The ballroom was filled with the kind of people who measured their worth in zeros and their importance in tax write-offs. I moved through the crowd with my camera, taking pictures of the wealthy and powerful while searching for my wife and her lover. I found them at a table near the front, sitting with 6 other couples who looked like they'd stepped out of a country club catalog. Vincent had his hand on Julia's back, a possessive gesture that made my blood boil. She was laughing at something he'd said, her face glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen from her in years. "Excuse me," I said, approaching their table with my camera raised. "Could I get a photo for the magazine?" Vincent looked annoyed, but Julia practically glowed. "Of course!" They posed like a couple, Vincent's arm around Julia's waist, both of them smiling like they had every right to be together. I took a dozen shots, each one more damning than the last. "Beautiful couple," I said, lowering my camera. "How long have you been together?" "Oh, we're not," Julia started, but Vincent cut her off. "We're business partners," he said smoothly. "Julia handles all my public relations." "Lucky man," I said. "She's obviously very talented." "Very," Vincent agreed, his hand moving lower on Julia's back. I spent the rest of the evening documenting their affair in real time. The way Vincent whispered in Julia's ear during the speeches, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way they looked at each other like they were the only 2 people in the room. During the silent auction, I watched Vincent bid $50,000 on a weekend in Napa Valley, then lean over to whisper something to Julia that made her blush. She nodded, and he squeezed her hand. A romantic getaway, purchased in front of 300 witnesses, with money that probably belonged to pension funds and retirement accounts. The arrogance was breathtaking. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Parking garage, level B, 5 minutes." I made my way to the parking garage, wondering if David had more instructions for me. Instead, I found Evelyn Strom standing next to her Mercedes, smoking a cigarette and watching the hotel entrance through the garage's security cameras on her phone. "Enjoying the show?" she asked, without looking at me. "It's educational." Vincent's getting sloppy. 6 months ago, he never would have been this public with a mistress. But Julia makes him feel young again, virile. Men his age will do stupid things for that feeling. "Is that why you married him?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I married Vincent because my father owed his father money, and marriage was cheaper than bankruptcy. 22 years of playing the devoted wife while he screwed his way through half the city's social register. Why not divorce him years ago?" Because divorce means splitting assets, and Vincent has been very careful to make sure most of our wealth is technically his alone. But when he goes to prison, everything gets seized by the government. And when that happens, I'll be the grieving widow who cooperates fully with the investigation in exchange for immunity, and a generous witness protection stipend. She dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her heel. How's Julia handling the stress of her double life? She seems to be enjoying it. They always do at first. The excitement, the danger, the feeling of being special enough to tempt a powerful man away from his wife. But it never lasts. Vincent will get bored with her, just like he got bored with all the others. What happens to her when this is over? That depends on how much she knows and how willing she is to cooperate. If she's smart, she'll claim she was manipulated and throw herself on the mercy of the court. If she's stubborn, she'll go down with Vincent. Evelyn got into her car, then rolled down the window. One more month, Mark, then you get your money, and Julia gets to find out what loyalty is really worth. I drove home through empty streets, thinking about loyalty and betrayal and the strange arithmetic of marriage. Julia was probably in Vincent's hotel suite right now, making love to a man who was using her as a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. In 1 month, she would lose everything: her lover, her job, her freedom, possibly her daughter's respect. And I would be $100 million richer. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something much more dangerous. I felt powerful. The game was almost over, and for the first time in 15 years, I was winning. With 4 weeks left in our devil's bargain, everything started accelerating. Julia's affair became more brazen, Vincent's business dealings more desperate, and my bank account more obscene. Evelyn had made good on her promise. Another $20 million appeared in my account, bringing my total to $30 million, with $70 million more to come. I'd never imagined what it felt like to be rich. Really rich. Not just comfortable or well off. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Julia was planning to leave me. I'd found the evidence hidden in her laptop: apartment listings in Chicago, job applications at PR firms that specialized in high-net-worth clients, and most damning of all, a letter to Emma explaining why Mommy needed to follow her heart, even if it meant leaving Daddy behind. She was going to run away with Vincent, leaving me to explain to our daughter why her mother had chosen money and excitement over family and stability. The letter was dated for next month, right around the time Evelyn's plan was supposed to reach its climax. "I need to talk to you about something," Emma said, cornering me in the kitchen on a Saturday morning. At 17, she had Julia's beauty and my stubborn streak, a combination that made her nearly impossible to fool. "What's up, kiddo?" "Mom's having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been living with the knowledge for weeks. Hearing it from my daughter somehow made it more real, more devastating. "Emma, don't lie to me, Dad. I'm not stupid. She comes home smelling like expensive cologne. She's always texting someone when she thinks we're not looking, and yesterday I saw her buying lingerie at Victoria's Secret. Lingerie she's definitely not wearing for you." I sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "How long have you known?" "A couple of months. I was hoping you'd figure it out and do something about it, but you've been acting like everything's normal." She sat down across from me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Are you getting divorced? It's complicated." "That's not an answer." I looked at my daughter, smart, beautiful, innocent despite her street wisdom, and made a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "Yes," I said. "We're getting divorced, but not yet. I need you to trust me for a few more weeks. Can you do that?" "What are you planning?" "Justice." Emma studied my face for a long moment. "Good," she said finally. "Mom thinks she's so smart, but she's not as careful as she thinks she is. The guy she's cheating with, his name is Vincent, right?" I nodded. "He's married too. I looked him up online. His wife is loaded, like seriously loaded. Old money, foundation boards, the whole thing. Does she know about Mom?" "Yes. And she's not happy about it." Emma smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like Julia, beautiful, calculating, and slightly dangerous. This is going to be fun to watch. The next week brought a flurry of activity. Vincent was liquidating assets, moving money through Julia's company in increasingly large amounts. According to David, the feds were getting close enough that Vincent was starting to panic. "He's planning to run," David told me during one of our coffee meetings. "Next week, maybe the week after. He's been buying untraceable cryptocurrency, setting up accounts in the Cayman Islands, the whole fugitive billionaire playbook." "What about Julia?" "He's promised to take her with him. New identities, new lives, a beach house in a country that doesn't extradite to the United States. She thinks she's going to be living in paradise with her wealthy lover." "But that's not what's going to happen." "Vincent Strom doesn't share. When he runs, he'll run alone, and Julia will be left behind to face federal charges for money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy. She'll go to prison, and he'll be sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere, laughing about the stupid American woman who thought she was special." That evening, Julia came home with champagne and Thai food from our favorite restaurant. She was practically glowing with excitement, bouncing around the kitchen like a teenager with a secret. "We need to celebrate," she announced, popping the cork. "What are we celebrating?" "I got promoted. Vincent is making me a full partner in his new venture. We're opening an office in Chicago, and I'm going to be running the whole operation." She poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed me one. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, thinking about the $70 million that would be in my account in 2 weeks. We clinked glasses, and Julia drained hers in one gulp. "Mark, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart stopped. "Okay. If I had to travel for work, I mean really travel, like relocate for a year or 2, would you be willing to move with me? You could work remotely, Emma could finish high school anywhere, and it would be such an adventure for our family." She was asking me to help her disappear with her lover. The audacity was breathtaking. "Where would we be going?" I asked. "Chicago to start, but Vincent has connections all over the world. We could live anywhere. Paris, London, maybe somewhere tropical. Wouldn't that be amazing?" It sounds too good to be true. Sometimes the best things in life seem that way. She moved closer, putting her arms around my neck. "I know I've been distant lately, working so much, but this opportunity could change everything for us. We could be rich, Mark. Really rich. We could have the life we always dreamed of." I looked into her eyes, the same green eyes I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago, and saw nothing but greed and self-deception. She actually believed that Vincent was going to take care of us, that her affair was somehow going to benefit our family. "I love you," I said, and for the first time in months, it wasn't entirely a lie. I did love her. Or at least I loved the woman she used to be before Vincent Strom had filled her head with fantasies of wealth and adventure. "I love you too," she whispered, kissing me softly. "Everything's going to be perfect. You'll see." After she went to bed, I sat in my study, looking at the photos David had sent me that afternoon. Vincent at a bank in the Cayman Islands. Vincent meeting with a man who specialized in creating false identities. Vincent purchasing a yacht that was currently anchored in international waters, ready to take him anywhere in the world that didn't have an extradition treaty with the United States. In 2 weeks, Julia was going to discover that her wealthy lover had played her for a fool. She was going to lose everything: her marriage, her freedom, her daughter's respect, and quite possibly her sanity. And I was going to be $100 million richer. The countdown had begun. The end came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 8 weeks after Evelyn Strom had walked into my life with her impossible proposition. I was drinking coffee in my kitchen, fresh coffee, because I'd started making it myself again, when the news broke. Federal agents this morning arrested prominent hedge fund manager Vincent Strom on charges of money laundering, securities fraud, and conspiracy, the reporter announced from my television screen. Strom, whose fund managed over $2 billion in assets, is accused of operating an elaborate scheme to hide investor money from federal regulators. The screen showed footage of Vincent being led away in handcuffs, his perfectly styled hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled from spending the night in a federal holding cell. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, like a deflated balloon in a $1,000 suit. My phone started ringing immediately. First Emma, calling from school, then Deshawn, who'd been following the story through his contacts in law enforcement. Then David, with a simple message. "It's done. Check your account." I logged into my banking app with trembling fingers. The number that appeared on my screen was so large it didn't seem real. 100,000 dollars. $100 million, just as Evelyn had promised. I was rich. Richer than I'd ever dreamed possible. Rich enough to disappear, to start over anywhere in the world, to give Emma a future that didn't include student loans and financial stress. Julia didn't come home that night, or the next night. On Thursday, Emma found the letter Julia had written, explaining her decision to follow her heart and start a new life with Vincent. The letter was dated 3 days earlier, before Vincent's arrest, when Julia still believed she was going to ride off into the sunset with her wealthy lover. She was really going to leave us, Emma said, holding the letter with shaking hands. She was going to abandon her own daughter for some rich asshole she barely knew. "I'm sorry, kiddo." "Don't be. I'm not." Emma crumpled up the letter and threw it in the trash. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. Julia finally came home on Friday evening, looking like she'd aged 10 years in a week. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. She found me in the living room, reading a book and pretending to be surprised by her appearance. "Mark," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." I figured we might. She sat down across from me, her hands twisted in her lap like broken birds. "You know about Vincent. I know he was arrested for financial crimes. I know his assets have been seized. I know the FBI is investigating everyone who did business with him." I closed my book and looked at her directly. "I know about the affair, Julia." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "How long have you known?" "Long enough. I never meant for this to happen. It started as business, and then it became something more, and Vincent said we could have a life together, that he could take care of us." "Us?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Vincent was planning to disappear to a non-extradition country with a new identity and a Swiss bank account. You were never part of his escape plan, Julia. You were just a convenient way to launder money through your PR firm." Her face went white. "That's not true. Your company received over $3 million in the past 2 months for services you never provided. That money is gone now, seized by the federal government along with everything else Vincent owned. And since your name is on all the contracts, you're probably going to be charged as an accessory." "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to God, Mark, I didn't know about the money laundering. I thought he loved me. Maybe he did, in his own selfish way. But love doesn't mean much when you're facing federal prison time." Julia started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "What am I going to do? My job is gone. My reputation is ruined. The FBI wants to question me about transactions I don't even understand. I've lost everything." "Not everything," I said quietly. "You still have your family." She looked up at me with something that might have been hope. "You mean that? After everything I've done, you'd still—" "No," I said. "I meant you still have Emma. As for me, I filed for divorce yesterday morning." The hope died in her eyes, replaced by something harder and more desperate. "You can't do this to me, Mark. Not now. I need you. I need us. We can work through this, go to counseling, start over." "The way you wanted to start over with Vincent in Chicago? Or maybe Paris, somewhere tropical?" She stared at me in shock. "You knew about that too?" "I knew about all of it, Julia. Every lie, every secret meeting, every plan you made to abandon your family for a man who was using you as a pawn in a criminal enterprise. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the suburban street where we'd built our life together. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table. I'm keeping the house, the cars, and full custody of Emma. You can have whatever's left after the federal government finishes seizing assets from your company. This is about revenge, she said, her voice turning ugly. You're punishing me because your ego can't handle being left for a better man. I turned back to her, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Really smiled. You're right, I said. This is about revenge, but not the kind you think. I walked to my study and returned with a manila envelope. Inside were copies of all the evidence I'd gathered over the past 2 months. Photos, recordings, financial documents, everything that proved Julia's affair and Vincent's criminal activities. I've been working with federal investigators for 8 weeks, I said, spreading the documents across the coffee table. Every secret meeting, every romantic dinner, every illegal transaction. I documented all of it. Julia's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, horrified understanding. You set me up, she whispered. I set Vincent up. You just got caught in the crossfire because you chose to betray your family for a criminal. The FBI will never believe I didn't know about the money laundering, not with all this evidence showing how close Vincent and I were. That's probably true, I agreed. But if you cooperate fully, if you testify against Vincent and help them recover the stolen money, you might avoid prison time. Might. Julia stared at the evidence of her own destruction, her face cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine. Why? She asked finally. Why did you do this to me? Because 15 years of marriage should have meant something. Because our daughter deserved a mother who wouldn't abandon her for money. Because Vincent Strom needed to learn that some people can't be bought or intimidated or discarded when they become inconvenient. I gathered up the documents and put them back in the envelope. And because his wife offered me $100 million to help destroy him. The number hit Julia like a physical blow. $100 million. Yes, it's already in my account, along with evidence that Vincent was planning to disappear without you. Evelyn Strom doesn't like it when people steal her husband, even temporarily. Julia sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of her situation. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. So, you're rich now, and I'm going to prison. You might go to prison. That depends on how useful you are to the FBI and how much mercy the judge decides to show a woman who got seduced by wealth and power. And Emma? Emma knows everything. She's known about your affair for months. She's disgusted by your choices, but she's still your daughter. If you serve your time, if you rebuild your life, if you prove that you're worthy of forgiveness, maybe someday she'll give you another chance. Julia stood up slowly, moving like an old woman. I need to pack some things. The FBI will probably want to search the house. They already have. Yesterday, while you were hiding from reality. They didn't find anything interesting here. All the evidence was in your office and Vincent's computers. She walked toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back to me. Did you ever love me, Mark? Really love me? Yes, I said. I loved you enough to stay married to a woman who was planning to abandon me. I loved you enough to give you a chance to come clean before the FBI closed their net. I loved you enough to make sure Emma would be financially secure no matter what happens to you. But not enough to forgive me. Forgiveness is for people who are sorry for what they did, not sorry they got caught. After Julia left, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage and the promise of my future. $100 million would buy a lot of things: security, freedom, opportunity, revenge. But it couldn't buy back 15 years of marriage to a woman who'd thrown it all away for a fantasy of wealth and excitement. Emma came home an hour later, took one look at my face, and knew it was over. "She's really gone?" she asked. "She's really gone." "Good," Emma said, sitting down beside me. "We're better off without her." Maybe we were. Maybe this was what justice looked like: the guilty punished, the innocent protected, and the betrayed finally, definitively victorious. Or maybe it was just revenge, dressed up in legal paperwork and bank transfers, satisfying and hollow in equal measure. Either way, it was finished. Vincent Strom was in federal custody, facing decades in prison. Julia was about to discover what loyalty was really worth. Evelyn had her revenge and her freedom, and I had $100 million and the rest of my life to figure out what to do with it. The game was over. I had won.